The Gibson Les Paul, an absolute legend of a guitar. Today we're going to try to answer the question, can Gibson's most affordable Les Paul hang with a Les Paul standard? There is a massive price difference between these two models, so we're going to plug them in, put them head to head, and see what happens. Yes, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are doing very well today. As I mentioned, Gibson Les Paul Shootout. On one hand, we have the Tribute Series, which is Gibson's most affordable Les Paul ever, versus, of course, the flagship, the Les Paul Standard. Now, as I mentioned, the price difference between these two models is, well, astronomical. This is $12.99, and if you want a standard with a flame top, it's about 3 times as much money. So yes, the price difference is huge. But can the Tribute hang with the standard? Well, let's find out. Right, so of course there's going to be some feature differences between these two models. I will link to them both in the video description below. You can get a spec by spec comparison there, but here are some of the biggest ones. On the Les Paul Standard, locking tuners. That's a nice feature. On the Tribute, vintage style tuners. Now, while we're talking about the necks, the Standard, obviously mahogany neck with binding. On the Tribute, maple neck, no binding. Now, as for the bodies, they're both mahogany. The Les Paul Standard, binding. Les Paul Tribute, it has sort of that exposed binding, so you can see the mahogany body and the maple top, but it's not like cream binding or anything like that. Flame top on the Les Paul Standard, plain top on the Tribute. Hardware looks identical. We'll plug the pickups in a second. Gloss finish versus satin, that kind of thing. So those are some of the biggest differences. But let's plug these in and do like a tone comparison. I want to see if that Tribute can sort of hold its own up against the Standard, because as I said, it's just a lot cheaper. So we'll see how it sounds when we plug them in. So here we go. Let's take a listen. All right, so let's talk about those tones. Now, given the fact that they're both made by Gibson, they're both the same Les Paul shape, they both have mahogany bodies, maple tops. The Tribute does have a maple neck and the Standard has a mahogany neck. That's the only difference between the woods. Both have rosewood fingerboards. They definitely sounded quite different, at least to me. The Standard, a lot more cut, a lot more brightness, a lot more punch up in those kind of third string, second string, first string, those kind of higher frequencies, a lot more sizzle on the Standard. And of course they have different pickup sets, which is where the different sounds are coming from. But when we played the Tribute after, and I wanted to play the Standard first because it's the flagship and the Tribute has to kind of live up to that Standard. So anyway, I wanted to play, Standard then Tribute in each one of the clips. And when we went to the Tribute, I think it was fairly noticeable that it was much more warm. Like those high sizzly frequencies from the Standard were replaced by a much more mellow tone. And I found it through all strings on that guitar. So that might make a difference to you. Now, a quick tweak to your amp or like cranking up the treble control on your amp will give some of that sizzle back, to the Tribute, but just wide open on all the same settings. Yeah, it was pretty noticeable that Standard was bright and cutting and present, and the Tribute a little bit more kind of mellow and warm. So here are my final thoughts on these two guitars. Let's start off with the Les Paul Tribute. Now, when I did my individual demo, I said, Gibson finally got it right. A low-cost Gibson Les Paul that plays well. They're all plecked, which means they take the human error out of the fretwork, which in my estimation for Gibson specifically is a very, very good thing. Finally, we've got good and consistent fretwork, even on affordable Les Pauls. And when I say affordable, you need to realize if you want to see Gibson on the headstock, you're just going to pay a premium. And the same thing with Fender or any other legacy brand maker. That headstock is what you pay the premium for. If you want a Les Paul style guitar and you spend, I don't know, $700 to $1,000, you're going to get many, many more features than this Tribute at $1,299. So that's just the straight up truth. You're going to pay a premium for Gibson. That being said, for $1,299, if a person saves up, it's attainable. You can own a Gibson Les Paul. And that's what I like about the Standard. It's raw. It sounds great. I love the pickups on this. Very plain, very basic, but I thought it sounded great. Now, as for the Les Paul Standard, well, it's the Standard for a reason. It's a beautiful guitar. I think the Les Paul design is one of the prettiest designs ever made. And this one, of course, is not really traditional with the blue burst and the clear knobs and the zebra pickups and stuff like that. But I love the way this guitar looks and plays. Now, the things I like about the Standard versus the Tribute, I do miss the binding on the Tribute. If I'm honest, I think it just feels right to have binding on a Les Paul. The other thing, of course, is the flame top. If you don't care about the flame top, I don't think you should buy a Standard. Just buy a plain top. Even if you get a Standard in plain top, it'll save you a few $100 or just go with the Tribute. So yes, it's very expensive. I had to trade off a few of my guitars to be able to afford this back in the day, but I do love this guitar. I think the design is wonderful. So there you guys go. The things I miss about versus the Tribute, pretty much just some aesthetic things. It does feel a little bit more premium and it does feel a little bit more expensive when you play it. And when you play the Tribute, you don't sort of feel like you have to baby it so much. So there is an advantage there. So those are the things I like about both guitars. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking my face right here. Other than that, all the rest of my information, links to the guitars, the amps, the gear I used, all that stuff will be down in the video description below. You can check it out there. Other than that, have yourself a great day. Take care.